Welcome back to part 3 of LiveCycle AEM Designer 301. All right, this time we're going to talk about how to continue on in our calendar form. And of course, just for review, this is the form where if you pick a date, the whole month is laid out in a table via scripting. All right, but that's the completed one. We have one in progress. Let's open up that one. All right. And so far, here's what our script looks like. All we've done so far is declare a date object inside of an if statement, and then just alerted, using a pop-up, alerted the end user what the date that's picked is. All right, so we're going to remove that app alert. That's just for development purposes. So we want to work on this part right here. We want the ability for whatever date is chosen to display on the header. And in order to do that, we have to mine the value of the date field for the selected month and the selected year. And some interesting problems emerge when we want to do this. First of all, if we did something like this, if we just said d get month, that would seem to be the way in which just to get a month, and it would be. But there's a problem. I'm going to go ahead and put an app.alert around this and show you what the problem is in real time. All right, so let's choose the month of March. And the value that gets passed into the app.alert is the number 2. And that seems to be wrong. March is the 3rd month of the year, not the 2nd. So what's going on here? Well, let's explain. Many times in JavaScript, numbers are ordinal. And of course, you can look up in a dictionary what that means, but it means that the first value is the value of 0. So in this case, January, February, March, January would be the number 0, February would be 1, March would be 2. And so this is actually working correctly, this get month, but it's spitting out a number that represents the month. It's not spitting out the spelled out English word March. And so we have to figure out a way for the script to give us the word March. And this is a great case study for a switch statement. So what is a switch statement? Well, simply put, a switch statement is a glorified if statement. So we could do this the hard way, and we could say if d.getMonth equals 0, then we could declare a variable called the month. We could set it equal to nothing at first, or at empty braces, and then we could say the month equals January. We could go close brace, else if d.getMonth, so on 12 different times. And that gets a little cumbersome, especially if this part of the if statement is more than just one line of code. So there's an easier way to do that. At least it's a little bit easier to the eyes, and it's using a switch statement. A switch statement does the conditional at the top one time, and then you can put cases of each thing you want. So I have 12 different cases, and then that means I need 12 different statements. One for each month. Okay, so we have all our cases now. We also need a default, which doesn't really include any code because we don't want anything to happen if, basically the default represents what would happen in the if statement if none of these conditions are fulfilled, and we don't want anything to happen. And then you have to have a break after every case. Let's check our syntax with the little syntax checker. All right, there's no red lines. All right, so what we're doing is we're declaring a variable called the month, setting it equal to nothing at first, and then we're using this glorified if statement called a switch statement to take whatever month is chosen, and if it's January, spit out the word into the variable, the month, January. And so what we can do at the end of this now is we can say table, month, header row 1, cell 1, dot raw value equals the month. No quote signs. This is a variable. And so that will spit out the month into this after the exit event is triggered. So that's a lot of code. That's 40 lines of code or so just for one little effect. But we need it in order to make this happen. So it's worth the time spent writing it. But then there's one other thing we want, and that is the year. And so this won't require much code because we can handle the numeric year being spit out. And so instead of just putting the month, we also want to concatenate. That's what the plus sign does. Basically stick on the end of our month a space, and then d.get full year. And that will give us, if we chose the month of December 2019, that would give us the 2019. All right, let's check our syntax. Looks like there's no problems. Let's test our form. We're going to choose a day inside of December 2019, and we get the resultant December 2019. So that works. So what we're doing, again, just to reiterate, is we're declaring a variable. We're testing the value of whatever month is spit out by our D object, our date object, that we declared when we exited the value of what's picked. We take whatever month it is, which is a numeric value, and we convert that using the switch statement into the month of the year. And then we take that value, that variable called the month, and we concatenate onto it a space and then just the numeric value of the full year. And that gives us the effect of putting our month in English as a word, not as a value, and our year into the header text field here. Okay, so everything's been a little bit easy peasy so far in this video. Not really advanced scripting. We've talked about switch statements before, and variables are very simple things. Now we have to start thinking through the harder part of this project, which is how do we get the table to populate with all the different numeric values of the days of the month? And how do we know what day to start on in a given month? And so those are a little bit harder questions to answer. And I'll just tell you from experience, there's always a point in every script when you're coming up with how to do it where you're going to have that oh no moment where it's like, wait a minute, I don't think I can do this. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to do this. And I think the best way to move forward when you get stuck like that is to just create an algorithm. And that's just a fancy way of saying create a step-by-step way to think through it. You don't have to write the code right now. What is it that we need? What kind of information do we need from our date picker in order to make this populate with all the numbers? Well, we need to know the month and the year. We already have that right here. All right, we know the month and the year. But we also need to know what the first day of that month was. And I don't just mean the 1st of December. I mean, what day of the week was it? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and so on. And so we need to figure out how to do that. And I'm not saying I know how to do that right now, but I'm just going to put that down as an algorithm. Just going to type that question out in a comment field. Remember, whenever you do the double slashes, everything turns green. It's just a comment. JavaScript ignores whatever you type behind the double slashes. And then after we figure out what the first day of the month is, then we have to figure out, well, how many days are in that month? It'll be either 28, 29, 30, or 31. That's the only 4 options we have. And then after we do that, we've got to figure out how in the world do we get all this stuff into the table? So we need to create a JavaScript object that represents the entire chosen month. And I'm just going to say this right now, that's most likely going to be an array. And I'll explain that in another video, what I mean by that when we get to that point. We're going to make an array that represents the month December of 2019 or the month January 2020 or whatever month we choose. We're going to put that in an array. And then we got to figure out a way to get the information into the table or TBL month. And there's all kinds of little steps underneath each of these we could also think about right now. The first day of the month, will it be a numeric value? Like our month value was 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to 11. We need to convert it into a position on the table. So if a numeric value of Sunday would represent a position on this table. And by the way, I think on the form I started with, I had a double header row. I had this one, and then I had a second one under here that had the days of the week. Let's go ahead and do that. And we'll get this format all corrected here. 12. Let's make it nice and centered. And then we're going to, just to differentiate between these two header rows, I'm going to call this header row 1. All right, that makes it more attractive. So all we have here right now is we have the shell of a form that works, and we get it to spit out the right month and the right year, but we still haven't figured out all this stuff. And so in subsequent videos, I'm going to start going through all these problems. And again, let me just say up front, it may seem at the beginning insurmountable. When I first started thinking through this, all I had was the comment from the user. And I started thinking through, oh, probably this far right here. I probably figured that out just in my head. But then I had to think about, well, I don't know exactly how I'm going to get the first day of the month and how I'm going to get it to position. But I was comfortable enough of doing this enough times with other things to know, okay, the code is there. We just got to find it. And if I don't know what to do, if I don't know the functions, I go to my helps and I look it up. So that's what we're going to do with this. And we're going to walk through it step by step. All right, so stay tuned. In part 4, we'll get into this kind of stuff. How do we decide what the first day of the month is and how many days are in the month? All right, stay tuned for that.